Good evening or good morning, depending on when you're watching this, everybody. Welcome back to Hoops HD. This is our Bracket Rundown podcast. I'm Chad Sherwood, your semi-host for the night. We'll get to that in a second here. But joined by John Stalika, Matt Zukowski, John Titel. The Puppet's running a little bit late tonight. Unfortunately, I think he will be joining in at some point, although we almost had a really good under-the-radar podcast last night without him until he jumped in. But this is our bracket rundown show where what we do is build a seed list on the air. Let me go ahead and put this on the screen and what we're going to be doing, kind of describe for everybody who's new to the show what we're doing before I hand this off here. But this is our list that we're going to be using for the night. What we will be doing is preparing and filling in the teams based on where we see things right now, how they are ranked. And you see there 1 through the end of the at-larges, which will be sometime around in the middle of the 12 line there, most likely. What else are we doing tonight? Okay, we're going to have some debate on them. And what we're doing to switch things up a little bit tonight is, John T., you're going to be taking over and acting as the moderator and host for everything. And you have the power to veto teams if people come up with absolutely crazy teams. We'll have a little argument and discussion back and forth. Should be fun. I did want to start by defining a couple terms that you might hear us saying here. One is protected seed. Protected seed is any of the top 16 teams, the 1 seed through the 4 seed. They're called protected because they're not supposed to be at a home court disadvantage in the first round. But when we say protected seed, we mean 1 through 4 seed. When we say the term first ballot team, we basically mean a team that's wearing white, one of the top 32 or so teams in the field, more or less. That's about how many teams get in on the initial ballots from the official committee. Beyond that, there's separate ballots where the rest of the field gets put in. Did I cover everything?
Sounds great.
All right. Well, I guess on that note, I am going to hand off the hosting duties here to you, Titel, and we can get going. It's all you, though. Take it away.
Taking off the training wheels. Here we go. So for our one line, Mr. Stalika, I'm going to need your top 4 teams, and then Matt and Chad are going to comment. Go for it.
I know they've had a couple losses during the past week, but my number 1 line is not going to change very much except for the order. I'm going to have Virginia and Villanova as number 1 and number 2. I'm going to have Kansas up here at number 3. And then I'm going to have Xavier as my last number 1.
So before we end it off for comments, what are your thoughts on the teams you have up there, like Villanova and Kansas, who took an L this week?
I mean, we know Villanova took a bit of a damaging loss against St. John's, but I think it should also be noted that Eric Paschal was out of that game with a concussion, and he's also going to be out for their game against Butler. I know Kansas has had some strange losses at home, but by the same token, they're still a very respectable 7-2 away from the Fog. And they have, by my count, 8 wins against teams that will probably be in our field, along with 1 protected seed win. And I also have Xavier up here now because they now have 7 wins against the field, including a protected seed win against Cincinnati.
The Joby nitty-gritty seems to like your picks. Matt, do you concur? And if not, who else would you like to put under consideration for the 1 line?
I agree with 3 of the 4. I would actually have Purdue over Kansas. And I had Purdue as my number 3 overall seed still.
And their loss to Ohio State doesn't affect your answer, it sounds like.
Put it this way. They could have been number 2 had they not lost that, but I'm a close loss to a team that now I have, that I dog, but now have as a protected seed. I'm not going to dig Purdue too much for that.
Chad, when you look at the team sheets for Kansas versus Purdue, anything step out to you that should sway it either way?
Yeah, I'm actually right there with Matt. I agree with him. I would not have Kansas on the 1 line. They'd probably be my number 5 team overall, but I would have Purdue up there instead. A few of the things that sway me, I know a lot of us aren't big fans of the predictive metrics. I kind of do look at them a little bit, and they kind of blow away Kansas when you look at the BPI, Sagrins, and Ken Palms. In addition, you got to look at those 2 losses. The Arizona State losses started to look very iffy almost, and the Oklahoma State loss is still bad. I know they've got a ton of wins, but Purdue, every single one of Purdue's quadrant one wins is also away from home. So again, now you look at 5 losses versus 3 losses, and things like that can be the difference there on the one line.
And unfortunately for John S., we're going to keep 3 of his 4, but we're going to get Purdue in there per the 2 commenters.
Okay.
You won't hear me complain too much because based on this seed order, it would seem like Xavier would have preference as far as the Midwest region.
Matt, you are up for the 2 line. Give me 4 teams, please.
I got Kansas, I have Texas Tech, I have Duke, and I have Auburn.
We'll check out the metrics on those as Chad populates it. All metrics look pretty strong. Not so much the Texas Tech strength of schedule, but everything else looks solid. Chad, your thoughts on that 2 line?
I have a major problem here, believe it or not, on the 2 line, and it's a team that, unless they come back, they're playing right now. But I don't like Duke as a 2 seed right now after that abysmal loss at St. John's. And the team that I do like, and I'll pull them right up here because I am still controlling this at least. I would rather have Tennessee on the 2 line Duke right now. There they are. And if you look at that Tennessee profile, you look at what Duke has at Miami, Michigan State, Texas, Florida neutral, okay, combined with 2 bad losses at St. John's and at BC. You look at Tennessee though, a sweep of Kentucky and Purdue neutral court and Texas A&M, and the worst loss is Arkansas on the road. That's not a bad loss at all. I love this Tennessee profile right now.
John S., your thoughts on the Duke versus Tennessee coin flip?
I still like Duke as far as a 2 seed right now, but I think as to Chad's comments, I'd actually like Clemson's profile slightly more than Tennessee because even with their injury, they're proving most of all that they can win without Grantham. But if you look at their overall profile, they have the win at Ohio State, which now looks even more significant, and also neutral court win against Florida that's going to go a long way, and also wins against 4 other teams that will probably be part of our field.
Matt, any thoughts on Duke versus Clemson in a battle of ACC rivals?
I prefer Duke because I think they've done their best work away from home, and they're a little more solid in the metrics.
I'll tell you that, Titel, not to jump in here, but I do appreciate the Clemson argument. In fact, I would have had them on this line also and had Auburn down, but I felt that Duke was even worse than any of those teams, and that's why I wanted to bring up Tennessee first.
Well, let's go back to the seed list as we're getting some anti-Duke sentiment, which totally shocks me, of course. And when you factor in the fact that as of this second, they are trailing by 3 in the final 4 minutes, we're going to bounce them. And I think that in terms of Clemson versus Tennessee, looking at the metrics, I'm going to go with the ACC out, ACC in. So let's get Clemson in there, please.
Okay, Clemson and Duke spot.
Sure. I agree it's a coin flip and would not have a problem either way, though. So that is going to put Duke and Tennessee under consideration. Chad, you have the 3 line.
Well, I will agree that Duke and Tennessee do both belong in here. I would say I have Tennessee over Duke, but both on the 3 line there. My other 2 teams, I might get a little flack for this next one. I would have Cincinnati on this 3 line here, probably more so because of just the volume of wins, and they're doing it in a semi-power conference. And I can't type right now, so these teams are not actually populating the field. And beyond Cincinnati, I would still have Oklahoma on this line here. That may get some disagreement as well, for all I know.
Let's get those 4 teams in, and then we'll let John S. start off the commenting.
There you go.
John, take it away.
I could agree with Tennessee, Duke, and Cincinnati. I do have some worries about Oklahoma, given that they are now in a slump that I believe involves losing 5 out of 6. But I think if I had to choose a replacement team, it's probably going to be the team that Joby described as the emperor having no clothes, and that's going to be Michigan State. Because like Cincinnati, they don't have the volume of quality wins, but certainly a very respectable quantity, and they're going to have their real last remaining chance to prove themselves when they host Purdue on Saturday.
Matt, we'll give Chad a second to call up a couple profiles here. Looks like we're going to get Oklahoma on the left, and I assume Michigan State on the right, or somebody else?
I'll put Michigan State because that was what Salika said, but if you want to put somebody else up, I will. Just call them out, and I'll throw them on the screen for you here.
Matt, what are your thoughts on Trae Young versus Izzo?
I might throw a third person, and it's the one who's just beaten Trae Young twice, and that's West Virginia.
I wonder if you think it's, for anybody on the panel, it seems like in the past sometimes the committee will try to give a little higher seed to somebody with a star player like a Trae Young. Do you think that's just a myth, or do you think that Oklahoma gets an extra bump because he might be the player of the year? Anybody?
I would probably say it's more of a myth, but you're never going to hear the jury deliberations coming out of the selection committee room.
I think that might cause you to overvalue a team of hair, but I have Oklahoma as number 12 on my S curve, so 3 or 4. I think it's a little too rich for Cincinnati. Still, that even say Michigan State's a one-hit wonder, but that is a pretty nice one-hit against North Carolina. Cincinnati's a quarter of a hit wonder or a half-hit wonder.
Well,
Go ahead, Chad.
That's where I disagree with you, Matt. There, Michigan State. You want to say they're a one-hit wonder? Yeah, they kind of are. But why not go Oklahoma? Oklahoma's a 2-hit wonder with Kansas and Texas Tech. Those are 2 teams that we've already put in this field. So, and North Carolina, not in yet.
Matt, what are you talking about? I could see a road for Oklahoma. They're 2-5 on the road. The Spartans are 5-1 on the road. I thought the committee loves road wins.
Well, I said Oklahoma's 2, though. At Wichita and TCU, teams will both be in our field, even if both have probably crept down the field some. They still will be in our field.
2 great wins. I'll give you that. Chad, let's go back to the seed line and clean this one up here, please.
All right. What do you want me to do? I'm
thinking that despite Oklahoma's 2 very nice wins and the possible one-hit wonder, so did we say the Mountaineers beat Oklahoma twice? Did I hear?
Yeah.
Then I like that. So let's get the Sooners out of there and give Huggy Bear a chance to go number 3, please.
All right, West Virginia with that RPI 24. Titel, I don't agree with it, but it's your call.
First time for everything. I kind of like hosting rather than giving my own, so I'm going to keep hosting, and we'll go to John S. for the 4 line, please.
Well, besides the aforementioned teams of Michigan and Oklahoma, I am going to go ahead and add Arizona here. And fresh off their win at Purdue last night, I'm going to add Ohio State to the 4 line.
Let's talk about that Ohio State win for anybody who missed it. It was just amazing. Back and forth the whole way. Buckeyes on the road not giving up in a very hostile home crowd for Purdue. Keita Bates-Diop with the follow putback with 3 seconds left. And then one of the most amazing passes that's going to get lost in history because they lost, Dakota Mathias, length of the floor, 90 feet on the money, Isaac Haas in the low post. One of the most amazing passes you ever see, missed the turnaround jumper. I think that was a huge win for the Buckeyes. Matt, your thoughts?
Yeah, that's the one. I had been dogging at Ohio State, but that's the big thing to add to the profile, beating a team we have on our 1 line now on the road. I think to be a protected team, you need at least 1 win like that. They have it, and they're not going to have too many more chances because the Pig is god-awful for a major conference this year.
I would probably say the closest thing Ohio State will have at this point will be the game at Michigan, but even the Wolverines have been slipping quite a bit in recent days.
Chad, who else do you have under consideration for your 4 line?
You want to pull up their team sheets here because I know you're not going to like this, but the team that I think belongs on the 4 line here, especially because it looks like they're very close to getting a win over Duke right now as we record this, would be North Carolina. But the team I would bounce out, Titel, is Arizona Wildcats. Now let me make this argument here for you because Arizona. I understand they're the best team in the Pac-12 by far. I don't even think it's close to anybody else in the Pac-12 at this point. But when you actually look into the meat of their resume, their wins are kind of hollow. Texas A&M neutral court, Arizona State home, and a bunch of non-tournament teams. So I guess Alabama home, no road wins against anybody that's going to be in this field, and a couple mediocre-ish losses with the Colorado loss, the SMU loss. I think it's an excellent team. I think it's a Final Four caliber team. I just don't think they've had the chances in the Pac-12, and therefore they don't have the resume to be better than North Carolina right now.
It's a Final Four caliber offense, I assure you. The defense, I think, is a question mark. For John S., though, is this something where the injuries come into play, that a lot of those losses were with Raleigh Alkins out? And if so, how do you think the committee will deal with that?
Well, the injuries certainly played a part as far as losing a few games out in Atlantis. But I think what's very important for Arizona is once all the pieces got healthy, they did start winning consistently. And the only loss I'm holding my nose is going to be the game in Colorado, where they had their lineup intact.
Matt, we got a Tar Heel team 3-4 on the road. My Wildcats are 6-2. Who do you like these two?
Despite the clever little politicking, actually, I am with Chad, and that's the exact change I would have made UNC over Arizona.
And Titel, if I could just jump in here, if you include road and neutral combined, it's 7. They're both 7-5. So,
hey, the Bahamas is outside the U.S. I'm not responsible for those losses. What do you want? If we go back to the 4 line, I'm trying to stall as much as I can to have this North Carolina game in the books, but rather than waste our time anymore, I will put them in and take out my Wildcats and put them strongly under consideration for the 5 line, please.
There they are, North Carolina. I can't – you pulled off that veto, Titel. I didn't think you'd ever do it.
I don't like to, but, I mean, when you look at the metrics, it's the second hardest schedule in the nation, and they're beating Duke as we speak. I can stall for another 11 seconds. They will. Matt, who besides Arizona do you have on your 5 line, please?
No, I do have Arizona. Here on my 5 line. I have Gonzaga. I have my favorite schizo team from Gainesville, Florida. And actually, this was hard. This is where I kind of hit a wall. I actually have their in-state neighbors, Florida State, as my other 5 seed. And I could be ripped on it, but, man, I sort of liked what they've done, especially away from home, and that was kind of the pullover, Rhode Island, Butler, Seton Hall. I think just the volume of losses is starting to catch up a little bit for me.
Chad, I want to know what you think of this 5 line, and if we can look ahead at the same time, are there any 4 or 5 matchups that strike your fancy?
4 or 5 matchups that strike my fancy. Looking at that grouping, I don't know, I think that blows me away right now. But in terms of his picks, I was all on the Florida State bandwagon a couple weeks ago. I think that they've slipped up recently. I'm not with him on Florida State at all. I'd probably actually go Rhode Island here. I know it's tough to evaluate an A-10 team because, but they've just beaten everybody and they just don't want to lose.
Sean S., your thoughts?
I would probably agree with Chad in that I value some consistency more than a little schizophrenia, because I would agree on Rhode Island. I would also agree that St. Mary's could also be up on the 5 line instead of the 2 Florida schools.
Ooh, man, that's a little rich for me on St. Mary's still.
What I'd like to point out real quick is I've been pumping since before Thanksgiving how the PK80 was the most amazing tournament in the history of the world and everything. Look at this 4-5 line and include Duke. I mean, this is the PK80 with these 20 teams, isn't it? Unbelievable.
We've already put in the 7th place game in the Battle for Atlantis too, haven't we?
Yeah.
Don S., do you have any thoughts on the 5 line?
I would agree with Arizona and Gonzaga, but if I had to take one of those teams out, I would take Florida State because their metrics just seem way high. I would probably have them borderline as a 6. But if I had to choose one of the teams that Chad and I were talking about, I would vote Rhode Island up into the 5 line.
Yeah, I'm not going to hear too much complaining on that. That was I probably had a little bit of an artificial ceiling on Rhode Island. Just, I mean, it's not their. I mean, they scheduled pretty well out of conference, so it's not their fault. Their league just took a dive this year.
You got all these quadrant 2 and quadrant 3 losses here for Florida State. Rhode Island's 3 losses to teams away from home that are in the field, and that's it. And the win against Seton Hall is really nice.
The thing I would point out is the remaining schedule. Florida State has several chances to beat teams who are in their field already with Clemson and teams that will probably make it in NC State, maybe not Notre Dame. Rhode Island, they could go 7-0 and finish off strong and go 26-3 regular season. But as much as I loved past tense the Bonnies, there's not going to be a lot of room for improvement over there.
Well, Titel, also, you look at the non-conference strength of schedule. Florida State 292, Rhodey number 3 in the nation. They scheduled, which is what the committee wants you to do, isn't it?
You have sold me. Let's go back and bump the Seminoles and put Rhodey in there.
All right.
I fold like a cheap suit. That's a very good case, I think. And Chad, I believe you are up for the 6th line. We have 2 right now under consideration in the Seminoles and the Gales. Your thoughts?
I'm still not really sold on the Seminoles. I would not have them on this line. My teams here would be, I would have that St. Mary's team here. I would also have Kentucky in here. I'd have Seton Hall, who we just discussed, and I would have in Alabama here.
Wow. I thought I was high in Alabama.
That might be a stretch, and I'll get beaten up for that one probably. But they have so many good wins and some very questionable losses, I guess.
John, what are we thinking about the 6th line as well as the under consideration Seminoles?
I think Florida State is a team that belongs up here. But if I had to mention a team that's has not been mentioned yet, I would probably say Texas could be up here.
Oh, that's another. Geez, man. I guess it's kind of mixed here, but neither of those. I had Texas and Alabama. We're winning a long ways on my list for them.
Also, keep in mind Texas beat Alabama head-to-head earlier this year.
Matt, tell us more about your list for the 6th line.
I think one team we haven't mentioned yet, I think is kind of hot, is Butler.
Chad, can we see a little Butler team sheet and maybe throw in Alabama as a comparison?
Sure. And I wouldn't scream of Butler or Alabama. I actually would have had Butler as my very next after Alabama. So it's, from my perspective, I think they're pretty close. I just love those Alabama top 20 wins, even if they're all at home.
And the non-conference strength of schedule, 22 is looking very nice. John, your thoughts on Butler versus Alabama?
Well, I had a chance to see Butler in person, so I would have been a lot more impressed with Butler and would have definitely put him this high had they been able to close out against Xavier. But as it is, I probably would go with Texas, even though they did have a bit of a slip-up against Kansas State earlier in the week.
Yeah, that digged me a little bit. A home loss to Kansas. Like, it's not an awful loss per se, but man, that his K-State had been reeling a little bit before that too.
And Chad, we see with the remaining schedule, both teams have some very quick opportunities to go up or down as the Vols face the Tide, and we get Villanova host an angry Villanova team hosting Butler on the 10th.
Oh,
yeah, they might be a pretty depleted one.
Villanova was just celebrating the Eagles Super Bowl on Wednesday night, so you know.
I thought they were celebrating the Temple win from Sunday.
You're both wrong. It's the Penn-Princeton win, but let's go back to the 6th line and figure out how far to drop Alabama. I mean, who's available there. I think that based on the metrics and the fact that they are hot, I'm going to put Butler in and take Alabama out, and that will finish up our top 6 lines. Huge Gonzaga-St. Mary's game coming up soon. Please tune in for that. It's going to be fantastic. And I believe we go to John for our 7 line, please.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put Texas and Florida State, seeing as how they're the top 2 on my board.
Mm-hmm.
Here is where I'm going to go ahead and add Michigan and Miami to the field.
That would be Mother Miami or non-Mother Miami?
That would be Junior Miami down in Florida.
Why do you like them over the Tide?
That's a good question. Miami does have a nice quantity of wins, and they also have a few decent road wins, including one at NC State and Also, Minnesota and Virginia Tech when they were a little more relevant, but also the win against Middle Tennessee over the holiday break is going to have some relevance as well.
Matt, your thoughts on the 7 line?
Don't mind it too much. I still think this is too high for Texas. I'd have Creighton up here as my replacement.
How come?
They're the better team, just playing a little better. Their profiles are probably, I think, are pretty similar. I think this quality team-wise, I think Creighton's a fair amount better, even without Kraupel.
Chad, your thoughts on the 7 line?
I think there's 2 teams that I would have over everybody here, maybe of all these teams here that we haven't even mentioned yet. Besides, I do kind of agree with Matt about Creighton. I do like them better than I think all 4 of these teams. I like Arizona State better than any of these teams. I like Texas A&M, the way they're playing right now, better than all these teams. A huge jump up for them after they'd gone completely in the toilet coming back.
If you want to throw ASU and A&M under consideration, I think we'll spend a little more time on the 7 through 10 seeds because it comes, I think, a little closer. I would just mention I forgot to do the 3-6 matchups in terms of any that catch my eye. Obviously, Kentucky-Duke would be amazing. Butler-Duke, a former final championship game from a couple of years ago. The 2-7 line is still wide open because we got ACC schools. We got Texas and Texas Tech potentially. But, John, your thoughts either on potential 2-7 matchups or all these possible 7-line teams?
I think you have to go with Cincinnati and Kentucky as a potential matchup. It does seem like we have it every decade or so.
It's the first time in forever I'd favor Cincinnati there. Strongly, I think.
So the Texas A&M metrics are amazing, considering this team had been plummeting for a month. I know they had injuries and suspensions. Huge win the other night at Auburn, which puts them trending in the right direction. So I think it's a little recency bias, but I want to get them in there. And I'm sold on Creighton based on the metrics and you guys selling them. So let's get Michigan out of there. Sorry, go blue. And then of the other 3, I think we'll leave in the – man, this is tough when it gets down this far. I think I'll leave in the Seminoles. And since Miami's hurting without Bruce Brown, let's take them out and put in Creighton and Texas A&M, please. Now we're ready for the 8 line, and I believe Matt is up. Matt, we got 4 under consideration. You like any or all of those 4?
I like Michigan, Arizona State, and Miami.
And your number 4?
I actually have a different SEC team. I have Missouri.
What are your thoughts? I've heard rumors that Porter Jr. has been dunking in practice and might come back. Everybody's saying he shouldn't play because it can only hurt him. Other people are saying if the kid wants to play and his dad's the assistant coach and his brother's on the team, what are your thoughts on having Porter back on the court?
It's like they've actually found a nice rhythm without him playing, I think, a totally different style than they probably practiced and they played in that Kansas exhibition game. So that'd be interesting. Like, undeniable, like, top 5 NBA talent, but, like, they found success playing, like, a bigger, a little bit slower lineup, basically a traditional Quanzo Martin style where I think he may have experimented more had Porter been healthy. But I wonder, because I remember, not to compare them to 2011 Duke, but Duke had a great year after Kyrie Irving got hurt. And then they integrated back in the tournament, and it wasn't quite the same.
Chad, any thoughts on Porter or the 1 versus 8 potential matchups or the 8 line or anything like that?
I think we're going to see Porter playing maybe not next 2 weeks, but I think by the time we reach the SEC tournament, when I'm here, I'd be shocked if we don't see him playing. But it's really interesting. How do you integrate a guy like that back into the team? In terms of the 1 versus 8 matchups, thankfully Kansas is on the 2 line and not on the 1 line. That's all I got to say there. But I actually, there's 2 other teams that I think are right close to this, and I'm not totally offended by these 4 teams by any means. I may have had these other 2 very slightly above them. I think they're worth mentioning, though. Both Wichita State and TCU. 2, especially if we're going to put Arizona State in, who's sucking in conference, why not TCU in, who's sucking in conference?
If you can also throw in my 2 cents, if we can get Nevada and Florida under consideration just to check out their metrics. And John asks your thoughts as the Puppet is happy to join us finally. Welcome, Puppet. How you doing?
We can start now. I'm here.
We already got Missouri in, so you're a little late. But John S., give us some thoughts on the 8 line, and then we'll go to the Puppet.
Okay.
I could probably agree as far as Michigan and Miami being up here. Even Arizona State, I can agree, although, as I said before, you can't keep splitting weeks 1-1 in the Pac-12. I still think it's too early to have Missouri here. And since I'm starting to get a little leery of TCU being 3 games under 500 in the Big 12, I would probably consider Alabama here as opposed to Missouri.
David, we see 4 on the 8 line and 4 under consideration. Your thoughts?
Let's see. I like Michigan. In Arizona State. I would have actually had them a little higher. I like Miami. Not as big on Missouri. I have them a little closer to the bubble, but I out of the teams under consideration, I'd probably have Wichita up there highest. But I have Missouri behind Alabama as well.
But just to get the Puppet up to speed, he's probably going to want to bump Missouri down to a 10 for his favorite matchup.
Yeah.
Well, let's not jump to conclusions. But yes, I have them on the 10 line. I mean, they're on the 10 line, and like the bracketing rules say that you keep them close, and I happen to have them in Wichita.
Let's do a quick run through each of you. I agree that we should keep Michigan, I don't agree we should keep ASU, but I will because I'm a nice guy in Miami. If we take out Missouri from each of you, I'll go one by one. Who would you have, either Missouri or one of the under consideration? Let's start with Chad.
Alabama.
Matt.
Other than that, I'd actually have Wichita.
John.
I will also take Sweet Home Alabama.
Puppet.
I think it's Wichita. No, Alabama. I actually have Alabama higher.
And the tide rolls right over Chad. Let's get Missouri out of there and Alabama in there, please.
All right.
And as the Puppet is finally ready to rock, David, you will have the 9 line. So of the 4 under considerations here, like some or all of those for your 9 line.
Let me see. Well, I mean, we're just now starting the show, aren't we? So my 1 line would be Virginia, Villanova, Xavier, and Purdue.
Nailed it.
All right. Let me see the 9 line. Yeah. I'm kind of like comparing my list and seeing who's not in. I had Florida. Is Florida in?
Not yet.
Yeah, Florida's way. Okay, yeah. I had them
Yeah,
in the. I had them on the 7 line. So I take it Gonzaga in. Is Texas in?
Yep.
Yeah.
Texas is in. Is Creighton, St. Mary's, Miami, which it's. Let's see. I had NC State ahead of TC. Well, ahead of everybody except. So I had Wichita, NC State. I had them ahead of both TCU and everybody other than Wichita State. And then I had Providence, and I actually had Louisville. I'm not as big on TCU. I mean, when you look at them, I don't know if we can pull their profile up or not, but they kind of had 2 neutral floor wins and a bunch of decent wins, but not enough good. Whereas, a team like NC State has some stuff on there that's really good. I just kind of like them a little more. And TCU.
Chad, if you can please pull up NC State and TCU. Let's go to John S. for some thoughts on those teams.
As far as TCU and NC State goes, I mean, TCU only has 2 wins against teams that are going to be solidly in the field at this point. Now, granted, the West Virginia win came after the Jalen Fisher injury. But other than that, they're a respectable 5-5 away from home. But as far as NC State, they have the bad overall schedule, but they have 4 monster wins, including Duke and Clemson at home, Arizona on a neutral floor, and Carolina on the road. So if I had to choose between one of the 2, I would take NC State.
Matt, those do seem like monster wins. Your thoughts?
Still, man, I don't know, because maybe I haven't seen them enough play. I still think a ton of NC State. I actually like TCU as a team. I think it wouldn't stun me still if they're actually, at the end of the year, a couple of lines higher than this just based on team quality. Their profiles and that I much prefer TCU as a team now.
Chad, I know you like that non-conference strength of schedule. It seems like a big disparity here.
the big disparity there, and again, I look at the bad losses, and the Greensboro at home, Northern Iowa, who we thought was good way back when they beat NC State.
Well, they were good way back then.
And I love those NC State wins, but I just think that TCU, when you look across the board on every single metric, is better on TCU, and I would take TCU still at this point. Although I think at the end of the day, it may end up getting flipped because TCU's schedule, I don't know that they can win these games in the Big 12. They haven't proven that to me yet.
Well, just because they've played 11 and lost 7 doesn't mean they're going to have struggle once the schedule gets even harder, Chad. I mean, wow, you're really jumping to conclusions there, aren't you?
I will say for the Big 12, that's about as favorable as you can get. Like, home games outside of the 3 best teams. And then at Iowa State's not easy, but, like, I'd rather have at Iowa State than at Kansas.
You don't have to sell me on taking TCU over a team that beat my Wildcats. So I'm happy to bounce NC State down and substitute TCU. Let's get we already got Wichita in there.
I thought when we had someone other than Chad, they would do it right. I guess not.
I will keep bumping Missouri to humor the puppet. John, what do you think about Nevada or somebody else on the 9 line?
I think Nevada I would have lower just because they had the home loss to UNLV, so I'm not going to have them this high. But I would still argue that NC State should be on this line, and even though they had the loss at UCLA, I still think the Trojans at USC should be up here.
Matt, your thoughts?
I can sort of live. I don't have either of those teams that close. I have them in my field, but like USC actually is the last team in my field. In that, I have NC State in out of the first 4, but barely. I have them like somewhere like I think like 43 on my board. The other team we haven't mentioned, this is bad. How have I become under the radar? I actually have New Mexico State up this high.
Wow.
Nothing wrong with that.
Let's see their metrics before we decide. Oh, that strength of schedule is a little high, isn't it, Matt?
Well, but what's their non-conference strength of schedule? That's one. And even that one, this is a unique situation. I'm not going to bag a mid-major as hard because they have their 3rd coach in 3 years. So, like, this wasn't a coach who'd been there for a while building up a program. This is a guy who took over the program in April.
And then
really had, I don't think, as much of a time to form because he barely knew his team. It turns out they're amazing, but.
Chad, can we throw Nevada up on the right side so we can see those two next to each other, please? I love New Mexico State, 7-1 on the road. It was a long time. It was over a month ago against Miami, but a win's a win. I don't like that there's missing. It's weird, like Nevada's got a whole bunch of meat in Tier 2, and there's not so much in New Mexico State. Chad, what do you think of these 2 teams?
Until last night, I would have definitely been on the Nevada bandwagon. But when the only thing you've done is beat Rhode Island and Boise State at home, and then you go lose to Vegas to add to a San Fran loss, I think Nevada is going to be sweating things out if they lose another game, which means that they got to win at Boise. I would definitely take New Mexico State among these 2, although there's several teams I think we haven't mentioned that I would take over either one of them, quite honestly.
Feel free to mention one.
I don't know why we haven't mentioned Michigan yet. I don't know why we haven't mentioned Arkansas.
Oh, Michigan's not in?
No, Michigan's already in, Chad.
Yet.
No, Michigan's in. Okay.
Oh, Michigan is in. I apologize. Okay. I don't know why we haven't mentioned Arkansas or Washington yet, though.
Throw
Arkansas.
them up for consideration and check it out. Puppet, we got to get 2 more teams on the 9 line. Who do you like?
Well, I actually like Washington, who he mentioned. But out of the list that's already there, I actually like New Mexico State as well. Simply because I know that their profile isn't as good, and I think we're doing this. Like if we were trying to guess the committee, I would not have them in on the first ballot. The 9 teams or higher basically means they're among the 36 that get put in before. Essentially, they're among the 36 that can get in without winning their conference tournaments for sure. The committee would never put them that high, but I think they are that good, even though their profile doesn't show it. So I would have them up there. I hate to say the term eye test, but they are that good. And out of everybody else, I don't understand how it can't be NC State. I mean, I just like what they've done. I know that their strength of schedule out of conference is somewhere around 380, which is pretty remarkable because there's only 350 teams. But I mean, they've beaten Duke, they've beaten North Carolina at North Carolina. Those are just NC State's good wins to me offset the bad that they've done, which isn't that bad. I mean, we do like Greensboro a little bit, don't we?
See, I'm wondering, were we all putting like Missouri up in this 8-9 range a month ago before they've done anything, and now they're starting to pick up some nice ones in the SEC, including a couple away from home.
Maybe you all, but I had Missouri outside my bubble for most of this.
Just trying to humor the puppet by keeping Missouri down in the 10. So let's throw NC State in here for the 9 line. We'll go one by one for your final team. Chad, give me your one final team for the 9 line, please.
Well, if it can't be Missouri because we want to keep them down, I'll go Arkansas.
Matt, who you got?
I'll stick with New Mexico State.
John?
I think I'll go Arkansas here.
Puppet?
New Mexico State. Have you seen Arkansas play recently? I mean, anyway, New Mexico State.
I will break the tie by putting New Mexico State there and giving them a rematch against Miami in an 8-9 game, hopefully, which would be fantastic. So that will certainly put Missouri on the 10-line, Chad, if we can throw them in there. And then let's go to John S. for 3 more on the 10-line, please.
For 3 more on the 10 line, I think the more I look at the profile, I am going to go ahead and withhold USC. So I will add Arkansas here. I will add Providence, who also has a win against Washington and everyone but Villanova as far as the cream of the crop in the Big East. And then I will add the aforementioned Washington Huskies.
Matt, what do we think of that 10 line?
I think it's a pretty solid one. This is where I would stop Nevada's free fall because I like them as a team. They're really strong in the metrics cumulatively. Their resume is a little weak, but this is where I think I'd stop their free fall.
Chad, talk to me about the 10 line.
I'm pretty okay with it. The other team that I think we haven't mentioned that I have kind of close to this is Kansas State as well. And that might not be as popular with the rest of you, but I can kind of live with this 10 line. I'm not offended by it.
David, your thoughts?
I didn't have Kansas State up this high. Louisville's not in yet, are they?
No.
I mean, I still really like the Cardinals. I know that there just isn't a whole lot of bad on their profile, and the little bit of good that they have, I think, would put them in this range. I mean, I certainly like them better than USC. You know, and really Nevada, I mean, we're beating them up, but Louisville has more good on their profile than Nevada does.
John S., do you like any of the 4 under consideration, or do you want to stick with your 10 line, or we'll check out Louisville against somebody else on the team sheets real quick while you think about that?
Let's talk about Louisville, Nevada. I'm up for you.
I wouldn't change the 10 line as it is in favor of a team like Louisville.
Well, another team that we haven't brought out, and you have to factor in everything that's working against them systematically, is this Nebraska team. And again, it's the dark. Did you see what happened to our website this morning? It was down. It's the same people that were attacking Nebraska that shut us down.
The fact that they might be somewhere in this under consideration board at all is a travesty.
I'll give you
what
Kansas.
are you talking?
I'll give you
Matt,
Kansas,
you're not
Missouri.
in on it.
I'm not giving you Nebraska.
Matt is in on it. Matt is part of it. He sits there on his iPad and plays around on the dark web attacking Nebraska.
I'm pretty happy with this 10 line, so I think we can keep on rolling. For the 11 line, I want to try to mix up and let you each do one on your own. So, Chad, I want one team for the 11. It can be one of these under consideration or somebody else. And I'd like an argument as to why, please.
I'll take the bait and go somewhere else entirely here. I'll put their team sheet up because I can control the team sheets still. What about Virginia Tech, one of the hottest teams out of the ACC, whose name I cannot type in appropriately, so we're never going to see them. But let's see if I can type it in. There's Vatech with the Carolina win, the Washington win, the NC State win. These are teams we were just discussing, and only one bad loss to St. Louis. one of the
With
hotter
that
teams.
non-conference strength of schedule, buddy.
Oh, yeah, gotta make exceptions now and then. North Carolina A&T down there is a potential tournament team. Citadel's been red hot. Presbyterian, one of the great wins of the season this year. Come on.
I like how Chad is making the same arguments that he's crushed me for in the past when he's talking about auto bid winners out of the lower tier conferences.
Matt,
just
give me
got
one team
by the non-conference schedule. I had to try to save myself somehow.
This is where I thought you were going.
I'm about to make Mr. Delvecchio proud. I have Houston.
Why do you like Houston?
Some nice wins. They're on a good roll here. And I like their metrics a lot.
You like their non-conference strength of schedule like Chad likes Virginia Tech's?
Yeah. Hey, in that you still got wins over Providence, Arkansas. I mean, they did enough to get a couple of decent wins. If your fluff was really bad, well, you played LSU at least.
David, Houston.
Man,
John, go ahead.
Coming out strong. You played LSU at least. Well, holy crap, has my mind changed?
I just want to keep you updated as far as Houston right now. They are down by 2 at home against SMU and are also violating one of our 10 commandments.
Well,
So we got Virginia Tech from Chad. We got Houston from Matt. John, give me one team for the 11, please.
One team for the 11. This is actually where I would have Nevada here.
How come?
They would have still the win against Rhode Island at the beginning of the year and also the win against Boise State. Even though they did have the stumble at home against UNLV, they're still a very respectable 9-4 away from home.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll put it this way. I like Nevada here of the rest of these teams, but I thought for one new team. But no, if we're putting the next team in the field, I'd be for Nevada as well.
So, David, we have 1 vote Virginia Tech, 1 vote Houston, 1 vote Nevada. Give me 1 vote for the 11, please.
Louisville, on the grounds that they're better than everyone else on this line. But again, out of this group, I think the win at Florida State is, I mean, from memory, better than any – well, okay, with the exception of K-State, who has some nice wins. I think the win at Florida State is better than any of them. When you look at their losses, I think, yes, there's a quantity of losses there, but none of them are really bad. It is kind of death by paper cuts, but they were competitive in a lot of those games, and a lot of those games were against good teams. And with no bad losses and a few good wins, I think this is about where they belong. And if anything – when you look at the 6 line, well, Kentucky edged them out, I suppose. But, Seton Hall barely beat them. Butler, those are the kinds of things. Not only do I think they belong on the 11, I think that they could make some of the teams on the 6 line sweat. They didn't make Kentucky sweat at all. But, given another chance, they might.
So I'm going to agree with the puppet. Let's get Louisville on the 11 line, especially because everybody wants to see them play Kentucky in a 6-11 game. I agree with John. I want to get Nevada in there on the 11 line. I just think that it was a bad loss to UNLV, but I think the resume and the metrics are pretty great. I want to go back to Chad in terms of Virginia Tech. How do you like them compared to these 3, Chad? I don't know that we need to see the team sheets, but you got to sell me a little more because I'm not loving their metrics compared to these 3.
I'll go down and say, actually, I do technically like Kansas State better. I wanted to kind of switch things up there and throw you a new team. But I would take Kansas State among these 4 as the best of the 4 profiles. And all 4 profiles stink, by the way. But
And Matt, you had Houston. Do you want to stick with them, or do you feel that they are a little below any of these 3 under consideration?
No, I Houston. I would have Chad's. I have Houston won. Forget the rest of the. But I have Houston won and USC last. So.
Okay. In that case, let's go with Houston. Hello for Matt, and let's do Chad's flip flop and get Kansas State in there because we like as many Wildcats as we can get. How many at-large bids do we have remaining now? I believe 3. Wow, and we got 2 under consideration. Let's keep it going with this one by one. Chad, give me one team for the 12 line, please.
Well, it's not going to help you with getting rid of an at-large bid, but I like Middle Tennessee
but
here.
it is the correct
Yeah.
team. Good pick. Good pick.
That's actually that's my next highest rated team too. So
Chad, why do you like the Blue Raiders?
Why don't I like the Blue Raiders? That they have a ton of good wins. They have a ton of nice wins. They have that win at Western Kentucky. They are now in first place in Conference USA. And unlike Western Kentucky, they're not going and losing games to Texas San Antonio. I just really think if you look at their metrics, it's 22 RPI. This is a team that's about to break into the top 25 if they keep winning. Strength of schedule is solid, as good as anybody. We're putting it in this range.
That's all good arguments. Puppet, can you give me one team for the 12 line, please?
I don't want to because it's Syracuse.
Well put. They did have a huge win the other night, though, so
Yeah.
they're certainly trending upward.
Right. But yeah, Syracuse would be my next. I mean, this is where I realized that the tournament only really needs 64 teams. But Syracuse is in this range. I have been saying that they were terrible for the last several weeks, and it was sincere. But with the win last night, you look at their overall power rankings, which I know are just a general indicator. But then you look at their profile, and what's bad on it isn't really that bad, and there's just enough good to where I think they're better than these other teams we're looking at. I still like Boise on the court, but again, it's hard to make that case, although they won in spectacular fashion the other night.
John S., can I get one team for the 12 line?
I am going to go ahead and throw Temple's name into consideration here. They started their process last night of trying to pick up a quantity of wins with their game against East Carolina. They've already got the quality quotient covered with Auburn, Clemson, and also Wichita State, Old Dominion, and South Carolina.
And Penn.
Yeah, and Penn. I'm going to echo that I like that pick. I know that they don't have the quality of wins, but we're supposed to be looking at everything in Temple. They've won 6 out of 7, or is it 7 out of 8 now? And it's there. I mean, when you look at least what's good on their profile, it blows everybody else away that we're talking about here.
Chad, can we throw Syracuse on the right to compare them to Fran Dunphy's Owls?
And all those quadrant 3 losses. Here they come. Quadrant 3 losses on both sides, right?
Well, at Notre Dame doesn't really count, does it? I guess it does.
Matt, before we get your pick for the 12 line, your thoughts on Temple Syracuse, and then I'll take your one pick for the 12 line.
Plus that Cuse is right on my borderline, so that's actually not bad. Still not quite. Temple, too many losses, not great in the metrics. I like them actually a lot going into the year, but still, that 13-10 needs to become about a 19-11.
I just think that if you look at the remaining schedule, Syracuse is going to either play its way on or off. It's not. They control their own destiny in terms of Miami, Carolina, Duke, Clemson. Those are teams that are well into our field. So we'll see how they do. Matt, give me one
I think
team
even NC State, that's one. That's kind of a big sort of two-way game.
Matt, give me one pick for the 12 line, please.
Hey, you guys made me do it. I got to be a homer here, take Marquette at this point, because decent wins, and we're looking at all these quadrant 2 and 3 losses. Marquette don't have any of those. I think they have one against Georgia.
So we got a bunch of different picks for the 12 line here. I believe we had Chad going Middle Tennessee, David going Cuse, John going Temple, and Matt going Marquette, if I correctly recall those.
I will say middle. I would have middle in here. This is, but if we're asking for a new team, but middle would be my next team in here too.
Then let's throw middle right in so as we avoid any controversy with them. David, based on your view of the under considerations, do you still feel good about Syracuse, or would you want to go somewhere else?
I'm kind of going back and forth with this. Yeah, I would still have Syracuse ahead of Temple, but it's close. Ask me in 5 minutes, and I might have Temple.
John S., I need you to stall for 5 minutes by saying if you want to stick with Temple or go somewhere else, please.
Filibustering with Temple for 5 minutes can be a bit of a dangerous proposition because of those quadrant 3 losses that we had mentioned. But again, I think it's going to be beating a dead horse here. They just need the quantity at this point.
And Matt, do you still think that Marquette, how do you like them compared to these other 5 who are under consideration?
I'd have Virginia Tech actually as the next one in. And you need to make a Virginia Tech and Marquette game in Dayton, too.
Then let's put the Hokies in to cover Chad's butt from a couple rounds ago, if he can type it. And then pop it. I know that wasn't 5 full minutes, but any thoughts on what we got left here?
No, I would still have Syracuse ahead of Temple. I'd like Virginia Tech a lot more if they were a much better team.
Who wouldn't? So let's see here. I think we need to get Marquette in to keep the panel happy. So let's throw in Marcus Howard as the best player in the Big East, arguably.
Wojo and Buzz, they might strangle each other before the game starts.
I love it.
Wojo not like Buzz at all.
Can I make an application that we just stop here? We don't even bother with the 68th team because the rest is trash.
Second the motion, Your Honor.
Yes. What do we like about Virginia Tech? In particular, am I overlooking something? Did they
have some big wins, I believe?
They have the win over Carolina, and the Newsom Court win over Washington that we probably would have laughed at in November looks pretty decent right now.
Okay, I still don't like the pick, but I can at least gag on it. It's not completely outrageous.
I know watching teams from the American gives our panel heartburn this year, but as Vandy showed last year, the committee is willing to reward teams that do schedule strong overall and does win a decent amount. So let's put Virginia Tech right in there. Yes, sir.
I will say the one thing, Vandy was actually pretty strong in the metrics, though, too. That's what hurt Temple is like.
Yeah.
Their metrics are weak. I think Washington, for instance, the Pomeroy is a little bit of an outlier. They're stronger. Especially in the success-based metrics, they're a lot stronger. Temple, I think, is across the board not that great.
I think those are all good points. That Washington win is looking huge for the Hokies. So, Chad, if we stop it there, can you remind folks how we will fill in the rest of the bracket, please?
Well, I guess
we need another team. We actually
need another team, technically. So
I could gag on USC at this point.
Pac-12 pride, throw them in.
All right, well, I'll put USC down there. What I'm going to do, though, tell you what you just asked me, is go ahead and fill in. In fact, I've already got them right here. I put this together. I had Loyola Chicago as the next team, making a very quick last-minute switch based on the fact that Belmont just lost tonight. I would next have Buffalo up, and then I'm going to quickly fill in by just hitting a button here. The rest of the field should show up here any second now.
John, while Chad does that, any thoughts? 5-12 matchups or any of the teams that we just saw filled in at the double-digit seeds?
I know you had mentioned earlier people would want to see a Kentucky and Louisville rematch in 6-11, but that would not be permissible as far as the first round goes.
It's a soft rule, but they actually would avoid that one.
Yeah,
unless you're talking making everyone – unless you're talking if it's the only way to avoid moving a seed line or putting everyone on a plane as opposed to a bus, they would avoid that one.
But I would also say if this were 2 years ago, how cool would it have been to see Rhode Island and Buffalo matching up the Hurley brothers? But alas, he took his act to the curtain of distraction.
I like seeing Penn on the 15 line so that we can avoid losing to Villanova yet again.
They'd avoid that one too.
We do have that potential Arizona-Buffalo game right there. I see it.
Yep.
That could have been the game. Could have been the Hurley brothers.
Anything else, Chad, before final thoughts? I forgot if we're good to go.
I would just mention I have a couple other teams that I think don't belong in right now that I think are close, including this SMU team, especially if they win this game tonight in Houston. And what about Mississippi State? Aren't they getting closer to the bubble?
Home court hero.
My next 4 out.
One true road win is just not enough. I mean, I think they'll get close to the bubble if they can string together some wins away from home. But they're pitiful. Now, to be fair to their program, I think that a sure sign that a team is getting better is typically a home court hero is the first step into before you're a solid tournament team. I think they're going in the right direction, but not this year. They just haven't done it.
Well, I guess if you wanted me to take it back here, Titel, I think great job. I think we got a great field, and I guess let's leave it up there while we go through the final thoughts. But I guess I will just note that down below on the website you can see the final bracketed version, which we'll be putting together in a few minutes. So
It's down there.
see all those great matchups there, which do not include Kansas versus Missouri in the same bracket because I made certain not to.
No, they do. You got to put that.
No, I had to move a few teams around to do it, but they definitely will not be matching up.
You haven't even built it yet. What the hell?
Well, you want me to call everybody here? Okay, Stalika, final thoughts?
Keep an eye on your TV on Sunday because that's when we'll get a sneak peek of the seed list as far as what the selection committee will be deciding for the season.
Yeah, but they're only going to give us the top 16. They're not going to tell us who the bubble teams are. Very disappointing there.
Right.
Matt?
Well, this is the Throwback Thursday here. How about one for having the WAC having a 9 seed that deserves it, man? This great old conference that's gone through its trails. And not just New Mexico State. I think the reason why they'd be considering on the 9 line, you have Utah Valley's now in the top 100 in the Power rankings, and Grand Canyon just outside of it at 106. So for a conference that's gone through so many trails and really should not be existing at this point, to be better than 10 or 12 other leagues at this point is amazing. And Throwback Thursday to the great old league in the WAC.
And don't forget Seattle and first-year coach Jim Hanford, if I'm not mistaken, because they've also had a pretty nice season themselves to date.
Yeah, Matt, I'm not going to give you the bad news then that Grand Canyon lost to Texas Rio Grande Valley tonight, and they're going to see their leagues go way down in the toilet.
Dang it.
Titel, I guess you're up, and then David's up.
So it's been a very exciting week. We saw 2 of our 1 seeds, Villanova and Purdue, go down to teams that I would argue they shouldn't have because they were at home. Auburn also lost at home in a 2 seed. So what makes the sport great is that we can guess and predict and do whatever we want all February long. It's not meaningless. I think that Virginia is going to be closer to the 1 line than Arkansas Pine Bluff will in a month, but the fact that it's still so exciting, and if they get the thing, it's not like in college football where you got to wait a week or something. Purdue gets right back, and they get to go to Michigan State, and Villanova gets to host Butler. So these teams get to get angry and channel that fury back on the court. It should be a great Saturday of college basketball.
David.
A couple things. As John mentioned, the selection committee is doing their preliminary, at least release of the protected seeds. I don't know how much of an indicator it is as to what they'll actually do in March, but I love the procedure because it's a bracket on television. Who doesn't like to see a bracket on television? But one of the things, I'm curious to see what they do with a team you all put on the 3 line, this Cincinnati team. They're high in the rankings. If that's an indicator then yeah, they'll end up there. They're low on teams that they have beaten that are in the field. Who have they beaten that's inside of our bubble? I don't think it's anyone. I'm just curious to see what the committee does with them Saturday. I have a second final thought. You had told me that I would be arbitrating tonight and that we were starting at 10:30. I showed up early, and yet you all had already done the first 8 lines. I don't know. I think that makes this whole process null and void.
That was completely on purpose, David. By the way, David, next week we're starting at midnight. So I guess, thanks, John, for running the show here. I think we got a great bracket. And
I could run the show.
Myself, Stalika.
I could run the show.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. We'll talk to you again real soon.